Well, hello again. Thanks for joining us for PLAAY.con 2020, the Platinum Day. It's been a fun day so far. Looks like a pretty exciting Fury Hardball tournament. I've got the results here. Maybe you've already seen them in the scoreboard room of the main lobby, but just a quick recap. Red League went to Dave Little with San Francisco. I guess I should preface that by saying of the 12 divisional winners, we only had one duplicate team. That was London, which finished, let me see here. One was the Blue South Division champion and also the Red North Division champion. Other than that, everybody was, all the other teams were different teams. So Dave Little is our Red League champion. A walk-off dinger by Xander in the championship game. Congratulations, Dave. In the Orange League, Bombay with Joseph Dowell is the champion. I watched the end of that game, a 14-5 win for Joseph. Congrats. The Blue League was won by James Cast. Not surprising. James has played a lot of Fury Hardball. I remember he wrote an article for the newsletter a couple newsletters ago where he played out like a full league, so it doesn't surprise me that he was pretty good at Fury Hardball. He managed Atlanta to the Blue League title. And then in the Green League, it was Kent Gray with Baltimore for the championship, beating out Scott Johnson, who had a pretty good run with Cincinnati. So there are four divisional champions: San Francisco, Bombay, Atlanta, and Baltimore. It'd be super cool if we could do like a little mini season between those four champions and come up with our ultimate champion. And maybe we'll figure out a way to make that happen. I'll reach out to everybody separately about that possibility. Would probably have to be on another day, but it'd be fun to get together again and have a little Fury Hardball Championship round robin. We'll start up college football here after the museum tour. I'll run down some specifics. I've got a couple of changes to the bowl schedule, not many. So after the museum tour, we'll run down the specifics of the college football Ultimate Bowl Game Series, which I'm really looking forward to. I have in mind which team I think might be our ultimate national champion. However, I will keep that to myself so as to not skew the results. I really don't know how many. I mean, I know a couple of the matchups. I know Kyle Cope and Mike Fitzgerald are going to have Clemson and Georgia, but I really don't know that many of the matchups. It'll be interesting to see which teams get chosen. All right. The PLAAY Games Museum Tour, a night at the museum. So over the years, I've collected a bunch of stuff. A lot of it has been purged over the years. I mean, I've been working with games for over 20 years now, and so we've had several different moves. We moved from one home in Dallas to another, and then we moved to Denver. And in each of those moves, we had some pretty major purges. But I did have a pretty good assortment of PLAAY memorabilia that I've hung on to for either sentimental reasons or just oversight, the not having thrown it out already. So we'll go through this. This is going to be really informal. I had really hoped to make this a kind of a very organized presentation, as if I was actually taking you on a tour from exhibit to exhibit. But to be honest with you, the game design seminar took up a lot more time than I thought it would. I put a lot more planning into that than I figured I would. I wound up kind of rehashing it and revamping it over the past week. So the museum tour will be by necessity rather informal, but I think you'll find it interesting. We're gonna end this. I've got 2 minutes past the hour right now. We're gonna end it at 10 minutes to the hour so that we can get prepared for college football, or so I've got some time to explain the college football stuff. So hopefully we'll get through all this. Let's start with the granddaddy of them all, second season. Yeah, we'll go to the game cam, I guess, for this, just so I can show you. I mean, if you want to move back and forth, there'll be times probably when I'll talk about stuff. But and I apologize if a lot of this isn't really visible. Hopefully it will be. I try to stay away from stuff that is just like, I've got lots and lots of spiral notebooks with notes written down, handwritten, and that makes for good memories for me, but it's not very visual. So I try to stay away from stuff like that. But let's go ahead and get started. So here's a game that was kind of an inspiration for second season. It's called Program 4 Pro Football, and if you're around in the 70s, you might remember this series. I sent away from this. It cost me $1. I read about it, I think, in Street and Smith's Pro Football, and it's a game which is it's got the instructions on one side, it's got some charts on the other side, and I probably only played maybe a half dozen games with this, but it was formative in that. After having played, literally thousands of games of APA football, where all the results come from the different cards, this game had the results coming from where there was a common set of charts, and you plugged in varying player ratings, like running average or passing average, or kicking percentage, and that was really kind of game changing for me. It's like, oh wow, that'd be a really great way to do it. You could do a lot more and have much simpler ratings and be able to create teams much more quickly with that kind of a system. And as you know, if you've played second season, that's essentially what second season is. It's a big book of charts and some relatively simple ratings, which you can then plug in and create all kinds of football action. This is one of the early worksheets for the second season game book. It's actually it was handwritten with a like a ballpoint pen or a felt tip marker rather, and then I photocopied it on a photocopy machine. I forget where I even was. I think it was probably at college, and I would fill in with pencil the different two-letter player codes. So this is essentially what the second season game book was. You can see there's some different codes in here. I got a WB, which I guess was the, I don't know, I guess that was wide receiver B. WA was wide receiver A. I eventually changed some of the nomenclature, but this gives you an idea of how I kind of put it together with a pencil and paper and erasing. And you got the yes and no results over here in the different boxes for the charts. And I at one time had all of these, but now I've only got 2 left. The game, I always envisioned this game really to be played with individual cards when I first was developing it. I thought, there should be individual cards. I played a lot of APA football, which had individual cards. I eventually picked up a copy of Status Pro Football, which had individual cards. And I guess it was just in my head that, you should have a card. Everybody should get a card. So this is sort of a mock-up sheet of individual cards for second season. This would be from I don't know if you can really see this. This would be from the 1960 NFL, which I play tested. I've got I won't bother showing you the binder, but I have the results from that season. I played out the entire season. The Cardinals actually won the championship over the Packers. So these are like this is what I envisioned the game would be, where you'd have the player name, you'd have the ratings there, and any play data would be down here. And it was going to be set up. This was one of my arrangements here on a game board like this, where you've got your offense is set up here, the quarterback, SB, fullback, the lineman, and here are your defensive players, your defensive backs A, B, C, and D. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, here's the linebackers and the line. You like it says here, any linebacker or defensive back can be played here. Any linebacker can be played. So you would take these little cards and you would arrange them here. And of course you needed 2 of these. Here's the other one, which had gray for the defense and white for the offense. and you would set these up side by side. Now you can see right off the bat that this takes up quite a bit of table space. It also takes time to set up. You got to set up there's 44 players you have to set up, and in many cases you've got to decide whether you're going to play, player A or player B in box G. So it was much more time consuming than I really preferred. I loved the flexibility of it, and we played several head-to-head leagues with this kind of an arrangement. But ultimately, it's like it takes a lot of time that you could be spent, playing the game as opposed to setting it up. So this idea eventually sort of went by the boards. I'll explain why I say sort of shortly. And I began to come up with this kind of an arrangement. This would date to about 1995 or so. And I still like the idea of having individual cards, but I thought, well, I'll print the individual cards on the team sheet with a little helmet logo and stuff like that. So this would have been this is like a sample sheet for what I kind of envisioned for the team sheets. I had actually during this period of time, there's a company called Paper Direct, which offered like templates, and I envisioned this as being like the template for the game. You could print on this. You print black and white on this, and I had it designed so that it would fold kind of like the Program 4 thing worked. And you could print on both sides. But it was going to say like second season football here, and there would be like charts here, and then the teams would be on this. And I remember thinking, this kind of looks like a football diagram with the dotted lines and stuff like that. So this was going to be the pattern that I was going to choose for the game. It never did come to that. Eventually, I moved on to the team sheet method, which was less graphics. The problem with this is that this is laid out in InDesign, and you had to actually which is really a graphics design program, not a word processing program. So I ultimately decided to go with making team sheets in Word, which was easier to manipulate. This is the many of you may remember this book. This was the first second season football game book, and it had the it's not that much different than what is currently or what up until a few years ago is what we used, but except we had the colored pages. So you could find the pass section really quickly by just going to the green pages. The safe was yellow. This is where the color coding comes from. Right now the game comes with color-coded chips with the safe defense coded yellow and the run defense coded red. That's where this originated from, the color-coded game book pages. And then you have your the other results here. This is the way the game was offered for from 2000 until 2003. The teams came like this, and again, some of you may remember this. It came bound like this in like a bound form, a gummed binding, which you could tear out. But and the reason we did this was because we wanted to have it in a book form, thinking that at the time the licensing structure was such that the general thought was if it was in a book, you could use full player names. Like in a publication or a book, you could use full player names. So small press game companies went to great pains to put their teams in books. Of course, it became apparent to me that maybe that wasn't such safe ground after all. And this particular book, at some point, I switched all the books to the player names to abbreviations. So like, I don't know if you can see this, but like you would use for Indianapolis. Here's 2001 Indianapolis. The quarterback is P.MANN. Instead of Peyton Manning, it's P.MANN. And instead of Marvin Harrison, it's M.HARR. And it was a way to get around to be sure that we weren't violating any licensing laws. Now, ultimately, people wonder, what's changed about that. The big change, not to spend a lot of time discussing that, the big change was in 2007. There was a federal court ruling, or actually a district court ruling, which essentially said it was a lawsuit brought against Major League Baseball by a fantasy baseball group. They wanted to have fantasy baseball published in their newspaper, and I believe it was Major League Baseball. said, no, you have to pay us for that. And they said, no, we don't, because, we're using your names in the newspaper. We should be able to, and this is the newspaper, we should be able to continue to use it. So ultimately, it went to court, and it was a very narrow ruling which said you could use player names and statistics were fair use, nothing more. So that really was a game changer for not just for small press, but like APA and Stratomatic and the big guys also went to using. They had been already using full player names, but they were paying Major League Baseball or the NFL for the rights to use them, and they stopped doing that in 2007 with that ruling. So that's why we can now use full player names, but nothing more. It's a very narrow legal ruling. And I should also add that that ruling could be challenged at any time, and then the rules be changed again. So we're always monitoring that and trying to. And that's one of the reasons why we do the fictional stuff, because it's like, that's that's our league. Here's our fictional sponsors. It's our own intellectual property. So that's kind of a background on football. Before I move away from football, these were given to me by Roger Rickman, who I don't know if Roger's watching. I know he was part of the Platinum package, but he had some other obligations. He actually gave this to me at our, where was it, Milwaukee get-together a few years ago. He had purchased these. He had purchased these from me in the early 2000s. And, of course, I lost the ability to print these sets when the original Play.com Macintosh crashed and died a natural death. It was a 1995 machine, and this was like 2013. It finally died out. But when that happened, I lost the ability to print these things. But this is how Football America originally was presented. The first Football America 2000 was in a team sheet format. But like I said, I always liked individual cards. So the succeeding Football America seasons were presented as individual player cards. And for those of you that follow Football America, some of these names, I don't know if any of these names are going to be very recognizable, because these are like from 20 years ago. This is the 2001 season, and here's the 2002 season. Thanks to Roger for preserving these. And what I would do is you would buy these sets. Each team would have 32 players on it. Just going to quickly go over this really quickly. Each team would have 32 players. This is Team 1. Here's Team 2, Team 3, Team 4. And then there would be a series. At the end, there would be some rookies. And there were 13 teams in Football America at this time. There was an unnamed team that you could put in any city you wanted. I scaled that back to 12 when I restarted Play.com. And then there would be a page of rookies. And then there would be a page of free agent players that you could move around from different teams. And each set would also come with a set of these little cards. You'd have a set of white cards with the different player codes on it. And then a set of a different colored cards. So for the 2001 season, it was green. And that changed every year, so that if you kept on buying the series, you would get colors for each of the seasons. And then you could have, use team colors from your own league to match up. The visiting team would be on the white cards, and the home team would be on the colored cards. And you would tear these cards out, and you would set the card, like you'd set your defensive back on card A, and you'd arrange the cards on your tabletop like that. It still took up space, but it was a little bit more manageable that way. So, a lot of these players, most of these players have long since retired, but there are a few players that you might recognize. Serge Aurelian is in here. I should find Serge Aurelian's card. I forget what team. There he is. There's Serge Aurelian right there. So he was with Team 4 in 2003. So anyway, that's kind of the history. By the way, I'll give you a little advance tip. I've put together, I was going to run it in the summer newsletter, but I thought, no, it really fits better in the fall. An all-decade Football America team, because, of course, Football America celebrated its 10th season last year, so this is the 11th season of Football America. So I went back, and it took me I spent more time on it, way more time on it than I should have. But I went back through each of the card sets and came up with an all-Football America team for each year. And then now we have our all-decade, all-time Football America decade team, and we'll publish that in the fall newsletter. Something to look forward to. All right, so that's second season. Let's move on to Face to the Mat. This is a couple of things here. First of all, I'll get to this book later. I'll get to this book in a second. This is the original Face to the Mat. Here's the original inspiration for Face to the Mat. It was a card. I was working at a radio station in Minneapolis, KDWB, and this was, of course, the heyday of the WWF, and we were giving away these action figures. It was at the Minnesota State Fair, and we had a bunch of these to give away, and so we were giving them away, and somebody had taken their action figure and torn it off and just littered. They'd thrown it on the ground. And so I picked it up, and something about it, I thought, these are pretty cool little illustrations of the wrestlers. Oh, there's the Big Boss Man. Oh, there's Brutus the Barber Beefcake. That's pretty cool. And something inside my head thought, I should make a game out of this. That would make a pretty cool game with these characters. So I began to think, how could you do wrestling in a board game? And as you can see, I basically used enlargement and photocopying, and I made my own cards with those wrestlers. And you can see there's the qualities that we use, and they're very simple. You got quick, agile, smart, and they gave them a specialty, and how many match points they got. And you can see I called it Big Time Wrestling at the time. There's the Garbage Man, who actually came from a different game. It was a game called Wrastlin'. I believe it was published by Avalon Hill. I'm not sure, but I liked that game, but I never quite got it, But I liked the Garbage Man, so I thought I'm going to put him in here too. So I had Garbage Man along with Hulk Hogan, Honky Tonk Man, and I came up with this system here. I mean, if you played Face to the Mat, you understand how this works. But this is the early Face to the Mat. And you're going to say, wow, that looks pretty familiar. There's Big Time Wrestling. Here's the wrestling tracks. And I designated the cards green and blue. So one wrestler was the green wrestler, one was the blue wrestler, and I had this fast action card deck. And some of the cards were green, some of the cards were blue. And you just shuffle them up, and you'd put the wrestlers in there, and you'd flip the card. And so the green wrestler, if he was mean, he would give his opponent a nasty rope burn and score a match point. You move him down the track. And then the blue wrestler would get to go. And then the blue wrestler again, if he was powerful. And the game was played that way. It's very simple, but it was pretty fun. I played out a season, and there was a guy in our church. His name was Mark Smith. Him and his son Peter. They were huge wrestling fans, and so I gave them a copy, and they just played it incessantly. And I thought, that's pretty neat. And then, things happened with our radio career. We wound up moving back to the East Coast, and I kind of just put this away. And never really thought much about it until I launched Play Games in 2000. And at that point, I thought, well, and I think I've told this story on the 20-year retrospective. I had this football game, and I thought, well, as long as I'm doing a website, what else do I have? And I thought, well, I got this wrestling game. I could do that. And so that's how Face to the Mat came out as one of the Play Games. This is just my original grid for the different qualities assignment. There's the cards. Now to this book. This book was really the turning point for Face to the Mat. It's a book. It's really not a book. It is a doctoral thesis by Sharon Mazer, who is the head of the department of was the head of the Department of Theater and Film Studies at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. And I saw this on the shelf at Half Price Books in Dallas, and it's called Professional Wrestling, Sport and Spectacle. And I thought, I should get that. It was like, I don't know, it was a couple bucks. It was half price, like I say. And in this book, as you can see, it was pretty revealing. It just became apparent to me in reading this that, wow, professional wrestling's really not about which moves work or some guy getting another guy in a hold. It's really a soap opera with good versus evil. And is the good guy going to win? And he's thwarted again. It's like a morality play. And she goes to great lengths to outline this, and it really was formative in making Face to the Mat what it is. More than just more than just move versus move. It's really good versus evil. So I don't know if that book is even available. I don't even know if it was ever really published in any kind of quantities. But I was fortunate enough to get a copy of that, and it was really important to the development of the wrestling game. Let's move on to baseball. I'm checking my time here. We're doing well, I think. Here's baseball, and you can see what the heck is that? Yeah, this is one of my early ideas for baseball, and it's very unlike History Maker baseball. It's really more like Stratomatic. I always wanted to make a baseball game, and this was one of my early ideas. It had two different columns with one set of results here and one set of results here. And this set of results was triggered by the decider die. That's where the decider die was, where I first kind of put it into action. So if you looked at these results, like the results were printed out, it would say like double play ball or walk with a Z. I don't know if you can see this. There's lots of little codes. XB4. I think BS is base stealing 4. H hit and run is 2. So they get these numerical ratings. It's kind of fiddly. Look at this. Outfielder 0+. BXZ looks kind of like APA. And then I had these pictures which I pulled out of a high school yearbook or a college yearbook, I think. I thought, I got to put some pictures on there, and made up some names for them. And I played around with this game for a couple years, but it was really not very satisfying. It was a lot like Stratomatic and APA, and it didn't really. It was like, why don't I just play Stratomatic or APA? But the decider die idea was the one thing that I took from this. The idea of, okay, you can have one set of results here and another that are triggered by a special die, and then a base set of results over here. Now this is the first decider die. I wish it was bigger. You can't really see it. As you can see, it's got writing on it, and so the idea was that you'd have degrees of dot and not dot. So in other words, this one, the green side obviously was the yes side. The red side was the no side. So this side says yes, This side says yes, but barely. And this side says absolutely yes. All right, so you could get like, is he a home run king? Oh, yes, but barely. So it added a little bit of extra narrative to it. And of course you have, definitely not, and no, exclamation point, and no, but no, not this time. So, it added a little bit of extra color to it, and it would have been nice to have a decider die like this, but the dot works, and it was one little extra narrative that we wound up not implementing. Here is a 2007 version of the History Maker Baseball master chart. At that time, I was calling it Play Ball. And I probably would have called it Play Ball, except there was another game that came out right about the time that History Maker was going to come out that was also called Play Ball, but with one A. And I thought, well, that's not. I can't use. It will seem like I'm ripping him off if I go ahead with my title. So I decided I better come up with a different title. But you can see that it was. I actually have 3 different versions of this. This is from 2006. This is from late 2006. This is from early 2007. And eventually it just kind of, it was a gradual evolution. You can see in this version there was no division between the numbers. But you can see the pencil mark there, and eventually you can see the white line here. That's where I came out. That's where I had decided that, okay, so if the lead die is 1, you got, the double play result. Interesting looking at this, though. So originally it was lead die 1 would be a double play on ground outs, but runners would advance 2 bases on hits. The idea being that a 1 would be good if you got a base hit, but bad if you got an out, versus 4, 5, and 6, where it would be bad if you got an out, but good if you got good if you got an out, but bad if you got a hit. Eventually, I changed that all around to make sure the numbers match, but it was interesting to see the thought process there. You can also see, maybe you can't see, there are different qualities in this version of the game than what eventually made it to the game. We've got the crafty quality. We've got erratic, which eventually became wild. We've got the launch quality, which was intended for batters, or for pitchers, rather, who gave up a lot of home runs. But I found that those statistics were not available on the backs of baseball cards. And, I played with it, with that quality, but it was always like, okay, well, I'll just make him launch, or I'll just make him not launch. And, it was, I ultimately just decided, I'm just not even going to put that in the game because it's not on the back of a baseball card. Rubber arm was one of the qualities for pitching. Master. So the qualities names changed over time, but the basic concept kind of stayed the same. Some of these results are still similar. I've got rare events on 235 instead of 135, but you get the idea. This is sort of the beginning of it all kind of gelling for History Maker Baseball. As I said, the idea was to play this with baseball cards, and this was one of the early ideas that I came up with. This is like printed on a sticker sheet, and ideally these would have been, like punch cuts so that you could peel them off the sheet and stick them on your baseball card. So you got the Heat, you got the Wild, you got A-Star, Workman. You get little pennants that you could put for Hero or Home Run King, and you would stick them on your cards, and would be able to play baseball that way. And this is one of the. I actually had this blown up into a very large sign, like a display banner. And I brought this along with me. Me and Dave Richter, who sadly passed away a few years ago. Dave was such a great pal to me. He and I spent many afternoons together working on games. He's a very unassuming, very quiet guy, former pipe fitter, retired, and he and I would just spend time just noodling about games. And he was a big help, as I allude to in the red, white, and blue racing game. But he was also a big help in baseball in that he would tag along with me to these we go to baseball card shows or malls, displays, and we'd set this big banner up, and we'd get the game out, and we'd give away a pack of baseball cards or a box of baseball cards, and usually, quite frankly, it was usually just me and him playing this game by ourselves for a few hours and maybe talking to 2 or 3 people. But rest in peace, Dave. Still miss you. But so this was the idea. It was going to be a baseball card game. Bring your baseball cards to life with Play Ball baseball card game. Eventually, though, it morphed into what it is now. This would have been a 2012 version of what the game book developed into. This is kind of basically the how-to guide was sort of, put in here. Again, the idea was you'd play this with baseball cards. You would get this booklet, and then you get your baseball cards, and you could quickly look up what the players were. And here's, you could begin to see it's starting to kind of come together like what you see in the History Maker book. With the pitcher, batter, fielder, and the 2 pages. And, we still got journeyman in there instead of workman, but most of the qualities have kind of evolved into, what you know now. And then you got the right now and the chemistry and the player experience charts. And then, of course, we moved to this. And originally, it was not going to be a spiral bound thing. It was just kind of staple bound like this. And then we moved. This was the original version of the game book, printed on paper, but with like a clear cover, and pretty similar to what you see now. The cards, however, were very different originally. Well, I don't want to say very different, but they were different. This is what History Maker baseball cards originally were going to look like. This is the '69 Yankees, so you got less lines. You've got these little gray areas, and for the pitchers, there was a big black area with reverse print. So you could easily, my thought was, you should easily be able to see which guys are the pitchers and which guys aren't. Bagged that idea because of the amount of ink that it took, and it really wasn't necessary. And sometimes, reverse print is harder to read. So you can see we stuck with this font, which is the same font that Second Season used, but the card design, you get the player experience rating centered on the bottom. So it was different than what it finally ended up being, but I guess it wasn't that different. So that's basically all I have for History Maker Baseball. But as you can see, it was quite the evolution from. I think the key thing that really I think gets underplayed when I'm talking about this game is it really was originally designed to be played with baseball cards. That was kind of my vision for it, and it still can be. And I'm still a big fan of playing the game that way. But it's not quite as key a thing as it was intended to be originally. All right, let's move on to red, white, and blue racing. I had many failed NASCAR ideas, and this was one of them. I don't want to say it was really a failure because it did. There were some of the concepts that I used here, which eventually made it into red, white, and blue racing. Um, so the idea of this game was, well, let me just back up. So I always was interested in NASCAR for the spectacle of it. I thought, when I first got interested in the NFL, in football, it was mainly because of the colors, the helmets and the uniforms and the pageantry of it. And it was the same kind of appeal for NASCAR, the cars and the colors and the crowds. And it was just, very, very, very much a spectacle. But once I started, trying to make a game about it, it quickly became boring. It's like you're just moving around a track, and some guys takes the lead, and I could never make the connection of what's exciting. Eventually, though, I figured out, you know what? Let's just bag the whole idea of moving around a track for the cars, and let's just position the cars relative to one another, which is what this game did. The cars would be set up in sort of see what I'm getting at here. So there were the colors, which were important to me, and I'm not going to set all the cards up, but you kind of get the idea. And I had them grouped. I just picked names. I like in terms of precious metals. So the top level was platinum, and then came gold, and then came silver, and then came bronze, and then came iron, and then came dust. So you would. And this board here, I couldn't quite get away from the idea of, well, you got to be moving around because that's the way it works in NASCAR, right? You're moving around a track. So I came up with this board idea where you'd put the token, on like here on the lightning bolt symbol, and you roll a die. Let's say you rolled a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'd look in the bronze group, and then everybody in the bronze group would get a chance to move. And you probably, if you played Red, White, and Blue Racing, you're probably thinking, oh, that sounds familiar. So and then, but the difference was there was this chart here, and you would go through each driver, and each driver would get a chance to either play safe, like play neutral, or play safe, or play aggressive. And the more aggressive, it was risk reward. You could try to move up more spaces at the risk of wrecking, or you could try to just kind of maybe nudge up a little bit and be very safe about it. So you'd roll for each driver based on what you wanted them to do, and then if they had the quality, it was again quality based. So let's say we went the bronze group, and we'd start with him, and let's say we rolled a 24 for him. Does he have the smart quality? Well, he does not have the smart quality. So that would be a no, and he wouldn't get to go anywhere. Then you go to the next guy, this number 81. We'd roll again. We'd say, we'd roll, let's say he's going to be aggressive, and we roll a 45. Is he aggressive? I forget whether that was. I don't think that was a conditional quality. It would actually be printed on his card. And if right, because here this guy is aggressive, so he's not aggressive, so he would have a chance to wreck. And so you'd process through that, and that would be that turn. And then you'd roll the die again, and let's say you rolled a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you go to the platinum group, and the platinum group would do the same thing. So you could probably see sort of echoes of Red, White, and Blue Racing in that. The problem with this game was it was relative. But you actually moved the cards. So let's say this guy moved up 4 spaces. You would move him up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. He would take this guy's space, and that means everybody would move back like this. And then let's say I've got the wrong number of people in the column. So and that in and of itself wasn't so bad. But the problem was when like this guy would let's say he would move up 6 spaces or 4 spaces. He'd go 1, 2. And then he'd have to move up 2 spaces here. And eventually, if he got the lead, he might actually move to another column. And so by the end of the race, you would have this big spread, oftentimes, of cards all the way from like one guy might have this much of a lead in between, and another guy might be way down here. I know I'm off. My hands are off the board, but you get the idea. The table was you have to have a very large table really to play this game. So that was one of the problems with this version. And eventually, when Dave Richter, when he and I started talking about a NASCAR game, I got this game out. Excuse me. And at some point in explaining this, we got the idea of, well, NASCAR is kind of like King of the Hill. So maybe you don't really need to be moving. You just, everybody's just trying to knock off the guy on the top. So maybe you don't have to have spaces in between. And the game kind of developed from there. So that's Red, White, and Blue Racing. Let us move on to, I don't have much for golf. I'll just show you a couple things. This I did want to show you, this was, for some of you, you'll remember this. This was the old PLAAY.com game box. It was like a folding box that we got from, I forget the name of the company. No. Well, we did use Container Store boxes for a while, but those were really more shirt boxes, and the stuff really didn't fit that well in them. So we found this supplier of boxes out of New Jersey, which were bigger. It was actually these are actually letterhead boxes. It was designed to store paper. They were kind of flimsy, but the beauty of them was they folded flat. You could fold them flat, and you could ship them flat. You could ship them in a flat package, and it was a lot less expensive to mail. And so you would get this, we would apply the front label and the back label, and then you would apply, we'd provide you side labels for the boxes, and you would put that together yourself. And it was a decent box. I think, some people didn't like the fact they felt like the box was too big for the amount of stuff that goes in it. And of course, so when we designed our boxes that we actually had manufactured, we intentionally reduced the depth of the box. And of course, now we have people saying, well, the box isn't big enough. I can't keep all my teams in there. So it's like, well, okay. I guess you can't please everybody, but this box served us really well for a number of years. And I just wanted to show that off really quickly. I don't have a lot to show about golf. Because golf is actually a pretty recently developed game, so there's not a lot different that I have from the early versions of the game. This was one of the early versions, though. This is the Southwind course, and you can see originally. Well, first of all, you'll see I was using color coding, and there was no little icon for tree or icon for water. It was just a number. It was color coded, and it would tell you which shot was the relevant shot for that particular hole or for that particular play. But I felt like the icons were visual, plus I thought black and white would be more economical. I could sell them for a lower price if they're black and white. But I think the thing that's notable is, in this early version of the game, the putt difficulty for, whatever your shot wound up being was indicated here rather than on a separate chart. So, and the idea was that some holes would have, difficult greens, and some would have very easy greens. Ultimately, we figured out, well, we could just make a greens quality that could capture that and not have to take up this space with the icons or anything like that, which is ultimately what we did. We got the challenging green and the friendly green, and we use this space now for the information about the hole and the boutique ratings. That's really about all I have here. Again, we were at one point considering using the History Maker baseball color coding for this. So you can see, the mood was purple. So if you failed this check, you'd go to the Right Now chart in blue, and we would print those. My thinking was we would print the Right Now charts in that color. So the Right Now chart would be blue, the chemistry chart, the mood chart would be purple. But again, the cost of doing that versus the benefit, it really didn't make much sense. So we just switched to using the icons for that. And that is pretty much all we have for golf. This is, let me check my time here. We got about 10 minutes left. This was the original PLAAY lacrosse game, Crash and Scramble, and it's in the original box. I had these boxes made in Dallas. I had 500 of them made, and it's a pretty nice box, pretty sturdy. But everything back then was all black and white. In fact, on the Face to the Mat box and on the Roller Rumble box, it used to say presented in classic black and white. And the idea was you used to watch wrestling or roller derby on your black and white TV. So the idea was, well, see, we're going to try to turn this what might be perceived as a negative into a positive. So we call it classic black and white. And so, yeah, all our games were entirely black and white. And this was a fast action. It's very different from Lacrosse Blast, which came along, I want to say in 2012, as a replacement for this. Because I really thought the Blast engine that we developed for hockey worked much better for lacrosse than this engine. This engine, this game engine was not bad. But I do think the Blast engine was better, and it also played faster. But just a quick tour of how this game worked. It used, again, 2 boards. This would be circa 2003. This was like the debut edition of the game. And you have your 2 boards set up like this. Let me see if I can get some space here. Okay, so yeah, and you'd put the player cards in the boxes, and again, these cards are actually the National Lacrosse League was much bigger in 2003. I think they had 12 teams. Well, I guess now that they've expanded, they're approaching that now. But again, we use the abbreviated names out of concern for licensing violation, and you set them up like that. I'm not going to go through how the game worked or anything like that, but you can see it's pretty similar to the hockey game. There were different qualities. Defensive players, like offensive players, would get the score quality. Defensive players would get the cover quality, and of course you could play. There were some guys that had both. That became less of a factor as lacrosse developed into a platoon sport. Believe it or not, when we first developed this game, which was not that long ago, 2003, indoor lacrosse was played with back and forth, kind of like hockey, where guys would play both offense and defense. But somewhere between then and now, maybe 10 years ago, it switched to a platoon sport where now you got 5-on-5, 5 defenders on the floor versus 5 offensive players, and then when the ball changes, all those players go off the floor, and it's like football. The other team's defense and the other team's offense take the floor. So this game was designed kind of prior to that. But you can see it was a black and white game. It had a fast action card deck, which would probably be very easily understood by most people in the play community, and a rules book, which also had some charts in it. The game did not have a lot of extra charts to it. These were the rare results, and then of course your game instructions. And I remember working with Andy Lewis on this. He of course was a big Philadelphia Wings fan, and he helped me write the rules and get the game figured out. And we put that on the market in 2003. And I remember thinking at that time that lacrosse is going to be the sport of the 21st century. I remember in the 80s is kind of when professional lacrosse kind of broke onto the sports scene. And I was interested because the New York team, I was working in New York City at the time, and the New York team was called the Saints. So I thought, the Saints, I got to follow them. And I remember thinking that, man, this is the up-and-coming sport. This is going to be an awesome sport. And it really just has never caught on for some reason. I'm not sure why. All right, our final display is going to be Roller Rumble. And, the thing about Roller Rumble is most of the stuff that I have for this is resources. I did a lot of research on roller derby. This is the definitive roller derby book. And I understand it's actually worth quite a bit of money now on eBay if you can find a copy of it. 5 Strides on the Bank Track by Frank DeFord, who was a noted sports writer for Sports Illustrated. And I think Frank DeFord actually took quite a lot of heat for being such a fan of roller derby. And it was like, how can you follow that? How can you follow roller? How can you be enthusiastic about roller derby? It's a fake sport. But if you read this book, you kind of get the idea that there were some worked elements to roller derby, but it wasn't entirely a worked sport. There was also quite a bit of competitiveness to it. Now, that may be because Frank DeFord wanted to portray it that way, or because Charlie O'Connell and Joan Weston and all these guys, many of them are personally interviewed here and have personal quotes. Maybe that's just the way they wanted people to think about it. But the bottom line was that this game was what Roller Rumble was based on, and this book was what Roller Rumble was based on. And in this book, roller derby is semi-authentic, semi-legitimate. at least partially legitimate. So I went from that and kind of riffed on that, and Roller Rumble is pretty much presents roller derby as a legitimate sport, which it may or may not have been. But I think it's noteworthy that you can take something like that and give it you can add more legitimacy to it than really maybe it really warrants, and it actually can add to the experience. This was another resource that I used for creating Roller Rumble. I don't know if this book is still available, but it's a fabulous book if you're a fan of roller derby. It's got lots of great pictures of the early roller derby days, where roller derby was really more of a race than a competition. And it's got some lots of great photos and ads and stuff like that. And then it goes to the golden age here. This is what most of us, if we remember the roller derby at all, this is generally what we remember. These uniforms, this track, the Kezar Pavilion in San Francisco, and the San Francisco Bombers. There's Joni Weston doing her thing. And then, of course, it continued on into the 80s. And eventually, when Roller Rumble came out, roller derby was making a comeback with Roller Jam, WSL Roller Jam, which debuted in 2001 and was kind of the inspiration for Roller Rumble. It looked at that time like roller derby was going to be back and better than ever. It had weekly telecasts and flashy uniforms. But something happened. There's Mark D'Amato, one of the original, the 1960s, 70s roller derby stars, who ported over to the new version of Roller Jam. It seemed like this was going to catch on, but then it quickly went downhill, and they implemented a bunch of crazy rules, and it just never really caught on. This is one of my original notebook things as you can see the little track there, and the idea of skaters positioned. This was going to be one of my original logos for it. It was going to be like Roller Rumble, kind of a bouncing sort of thing. And I think there's a match track here that I came up with. Yeah, there's your three spaces in your jam. Anyway, so that is kind of the story behind Roller Rumble. Roller Rumble, I think, is one of the more underappreciated play games. It's got a lot of tradition to it, a lot of history to it. Most people don't realize that at one point, roller derby was the third biggest sport in America. And there's a point in the 1940s where, roller derby telecasts, outdrew every other sports telecast except for baseball and college football. So it had its shot, but for some reason it just didn't catch on. This is just one more. These are some more of the resources that I got in putting together the Roller Rumble game. There's quite a bit of research that went into it, and I can see that we're out of time, so that will have to wrap up our museum tour. It looks like I've pretty much run out of exhibits anyway. I guess I timed it perfectly. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little visit to the Play Games Museum. Hopefully I didn't rush through it too much. But yeah, it's been a fun 20-plus years, and a lot of great memories along the way. I'm kind of at a loss for how to sum it all up, except to say thanks for being part of the ride. Thanks for joining me on the journey of sports simulation games. All right, let's move on to the next event of our PlayNotCon 2020, the College Football Ultimate Bowl Game Series. Just a couple of quick rules here, and I believe I've got to do some clarification on the bowl games. First of all, let's talk about. We had a couple of cancellations, so these are the changes that I believe we are going to make. So for the Altitude Bowl, Ray Price is going to take over for Dale Buckingham, and he will move to the Altitude Bowl to play Joe Rocchino. The Friendship Bowl is going to have Neil Maitland join Chris Dinkins. Kent Gray was unable to join us this afternoon. He's helping with his elderly mother. She had some things that had to be done today. So he's been granted leave. But this will be interesting because the Friendship Bowl is great. We got Neil, who's over in Scotland, and Chris is in New Jersey. So that'll be a kind of an ambassador's college football game. So the Friendship Bowl is going to be Neil and Chris. And we're going to cancel the Motor Bowl. There'll be nobody playing in the Motor Bowl. I believe everybody else should be good. If your opponent doesn't show up, as I mentioned in one of the updates, if your opponent doesn't show up within 10 minutes or so, just join me in the help room, and maybe you can just hang out there until we'll see if anybody else shows up whose opponent also didn't make it. But the update should have spelled out what mode you're playing. I matched people up with the kind of mode that they wanted to play, where they wanted to play express the whole game, or full play the whole game, or a mix of both. And if there are any issues or problems, just find me in the help room in the main lobby, and we'll get that ironed out. For the College Football Bowl Series, obviously these are neutral site games. So whether you're playing express or full play, if the home field advantage comes up, you'll decide between the two of you, between the both coaches, how you want to handle that. There are a couple different ways. You can say both defenses are home, or both offenses are home, or you can alternate quarters. However is fairest, or however you'd like to do it is fine with me. But these are neutral site games. If you have any game questions, interpretation of the rules, you can come find me in the help room. If it's minor, I was just agreeing between yourselves how to handle it, maybe flipping a coin or rolling a dice. But if it's something that is game changing, or the game hinges on it, just find me in the help room and we'll make the call for you. When your game is finished, go ahead and post the score in the scoreboard room. By the way, great job posting scores from the Fury Hardball result. It was awesome. We'll be able to use that for our newsletter. Great summary. So let's just do the same thing for the college football game. Just put your bowl game, the two teams, the winner, maybe a couple of highlights. And at the end of the afternoon, we should be able to compile our, how many teams, the wins and losses, and come up with a all-time ultimate undefeated national champion. So post your scores in the scoreboard room, and we will do that. So that we've blocked out 3 hours for this. The express game's obviously going to go much faster than that. Then after that, you're welcome to, visit other rooms. Again, be mindful of the camera and the mute and the mic. Or you can hang out in the general area and just visit. We got a couple of voice chat rooms. You can just hang out in the voice chat room and visit via voice rather than text. And then be back here at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, which would be 6 p.m. Eastern Time, for our final webinar, the Sports Game Design 101. And then after that, we'll give away our raffle prizes, and that'll be a wrap. So thanks again for being part of this. I think it's going really well, and so glad that you've chosen to be part of this grand experiment in tabletop sports board gaming, PLAAY NotCon 2020. I'll cut in if necessary. Otherwise, find me in the help room, and we'll see you at 4 p.m. Mountain for the game design webinar.